Welcome to another season of Hoda's Career Info, the program where career professionals from across the globe meet to empower you to succeed. This program is brought to you by Right Career Fit. Listen and learn, and remember to have that very important career conversation with a career professional.
When I'm talking about career, I'm talking about the individual's pathway through life, learning, and work. There's a lot of power in happenstance. As a job seeker, pay attention to yourself, pay attention to the environment around you, but also pay attention to the big picture and think about how it's changing. As careers professionals, we should be trying to empower people, and as individuals, you should be trying to look for possibilities and really recognize that you have agency over your life.
Thank you for joining me in Hoda's Career Info, your career program where guests from across the globe share career tips and personal stories to help you successfully navigate your career. I am Hoda, your host. I look forward to another season of career chats with international professionals who will inspire you to take your journey to the next level. My guest today is Tristram Hooley. Dr. Hooley is an internationally renowned expert in career and career guidance. He is a professor at the Inland Norway University of Applied Sciences and at the International Center for Guidance Studies at the University of Derby. He is interested in how career interacts with politics, policy, and technology, and believes that career guidance should be a central part of the education and employment system. He is also a passionate believer that career guidance can be a force for social justice. Professor Hooley has written 10 books, over 60 articles and book chapters, and more than 100 reports. His latest book is the Oxford Handbook of Career Development, published by the Oxford University Press. He is also a visiting professor at Canterbury Christ and Church University, a director at NICEC, a Winston Churchill Fellow, and an editor of the Career Guidance and Social Justice website. Tristram is chair of Advisa and on the board of the Career Development Policy Group and the International Center for Career Development and Public Policy. You can find out more about Dr. Hooley by following his blog, adventuresincareerdevelopment.wordpress.com. Thank you for joining me and Tristram Hooley. Dr. Hooley shares tremendously valuable advice on the need to pay attention to ourselves, to the environment, and to the big picture. And I cannot wait for your feedback on what he shares. Welcome, Tristram Hooley, to Hoda's Career Info. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you slowing down from all the conferences and the work that you do to talk to me today about career development. My first question to you, Tristram, is part of this program, I always challenge guests to choose one career term that reflects the work they do. It can be 1 or 2 or 3 words, whatever you like, and just to educate the audience about the work that we do and the terms that we use. So what would be your career term? And if you don't mind defining it from your perspective, so not the Google or dictionary perspective.
Yeah, well, great. Well, thank you for having me. Yeah, so I'm Tristram. I'm from the UK, and the term that I'd really like to talk about is actually the term career itself, because I think every presentation I do, I start with a definition of career, and almost everybody in the audience has a slightly different one. So I think it's worth us actually spending a bit of time, because this is our core concept. This is what we're about as a field, isn't it? And when I'm talking about career, I'm talking about the individual's pathway through life, learning, and work. So it's not just about paid work. It's certainly not just about climbing up a ladder to the top of a corporation. For some people, they might spend their life not doing any paid work. People for reasons of health or for reasons of family might have other things that are going on. But what we're doing in our career is we're making the decisions about how we spend our time across our life. And we're also interacting with other people and interacting with the society around us. And I think if we've thought about career like that, it becomes a much more inclusive and democratic sort of concept. And I often, when I tell people what I do, people often say, "Oh, well, I've never had a career. It's not relevant to me. I've just had a collection of jobs." And I'm always going back to them saying, no, you have had a career. Whatever you've done, however you've chosen to spend your life, you had other choices. You could have spent it a different way. And so this concept of career and really talking to people about what it means, I think is really important.
I like this definition, and it is unique. I don't think I would find it on Google search if I were to look it up. As you're talking, I'm thinking perhaps it fits within work in the traditional definitions, but then it could be paid or unpaid work. So I appreciate you sharing this perspective and getting us to think about it.
Work's, of course, really important. I'm not diminishing the importance of work. I mean, most of us will spend most or a very large proportion of our life working for money. It's what puts food on the table. It's what we need to do. But hopefully we work to live, and our career is about that life. It's about how we spend our life and how we divide our time amongst all the different possibilities that we have in our life. And so I suppose I'm trying to move career beyond just the definition of it as paid work.
I like that you do that, because I did spend a part of my life as a stay-at-home mom where I took care of the kids. And so I was not getting paid for that, but I was working a lot at home.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yes.
Yeah.
My next question to you, Tristram, is about your story. Do you mind sharing with the audience, if you want your whole story, but also a portion of it embedded with it, some sort of message to keep people motivated that you learned from your story?
Well, I don't know whether I've got a message, but I mean, my history is that I did English literature at university, and I loved that. I had a great time, and then I thought, well, I've enjoyed this, and I'll do a PhD, which I also did in English literature, and I kind of fell out of love with it really while I was going. And so then I really wasn't sure what to do with my life, and I tried various different things after that, and I suppose at the time it felt like I'd wasted my time, that I'd done this long qualification in a PhD that didn't seem to lead me anywhere. But of course, whatever you do, you learn from it, and so as I eventually got into careers work, I started working with people, helping people to figure out what they were doing with their life. Often people who had similar sort of background to me, so people who sort of gone through the academic route and so on. And I started to think, actually, maybe there's some really interesting stuff to do here. And I started to do some research in it. And I realized that at that point, I started to pull back a lot of the things that I'd learned in my PhD. So I've kind of had this sort of strange experience where I had a plan. When the plan didn't really go the way I was thinking, I've kind of drifted and found interesting things and pursued what I found most interesting. And I found that throughout my life, I've managed to put all of the things back together again. And most of the things that I've learned, I've found a way to use. So I think one of the things is, it's not to say that there's no purpose in having a career plan or having an aspiration. Of course, that can be very useful. But if it doesn't work out, or if it doesn't work out exactly how you hope, don't be despondent. You will still use a lot of the things. And I think that actually recognizing that there's a lot of power in happenstance is also, I think, really powerful sort of career lesson for us all.
A very important message, because we all have a plan, but we get an opportunity or something happens and we like, why not? Let's take it in a different direction. And that's important. That's an important message, is not to be too stuck if things are not working, particularly as well. I know you're always in conferences, very busy, and I appreciate the work that you do. and you recently presented at one of the conferences, the Asia Pacific Career Development Association annual conference. The presentation was titled Predicting the Future in Turbulent Times, Role of Career Development. So I have two questions about the presentation, and they come from different lenses. First one is from the career development professional lens. Can you tell us your thoughts about how can we support our clients to be ready for the future in these turbulent times?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose where I'm coming from in that is, in a way, I'm trying to reassure people, because I think a lot of what we hear all the time is always about change, change, change. We always hear the world is changing, you know, you don't know what's coming. And there's all these statistics, many of which are not entirely reliable, about, you know, the number of jobs. You're going to end up doing jobs that haven't even been thought of yet, and all of this sort of thing. And one of the things that I was trying to argue at that presentation, and I sort of quite frequently try and argue, is there's also quite a lot that's very likely to stay the same. You know, it is of course important to be ready for change. There are going to be changes in your life. The way careers work, the way the labour market works, and so on, is going to be different. But you know, there are certain things that you can bet on. And so, for example, I would be prepared to put quite a lot of money on the fact that in 10, 20, even 50 years' time, there will still be an awful lot of people working as teachers. I reckon there will still be an awful lot of people working as nurses or as doctors, and so on and so on, you know. And so one of the things that I think we need to be careful is to try and balance this idea of change with the idea of continuity, and that in our lives, we need to think about recognizing, you know, there are some things I want to hold on to, there are some things I want to let go of, but I'm not standing on completely, I'm standing on some kind of firm ground. I can make some assumptions about where things are going. So I think from the point of view of careers professionals, our aim is to help people to talk that through, to think that through. It's not to be, you know, soothsayers. It's not to predict the future. We can't know exactly what's going to happen. What we can help people to do is to recognize that both change and continuity are going to be forces in their life. And we can help them to make a purposeful next step, and also to teach them some career management skills, which will help them to react whatever happens. And so I think, you know, that's in a way is I think the core purpose of what we're doing as career professionals, is we're trying to help people make the purposeful next step, but we're also giving them some tools that are going to be useful to them over the longer run, kind of regardless of what happens.
So when we have clients saying, but AI is changing everything, technology is changing everything, will what you're giving me be valid 10 years from now for me? How would we respond to that as career professionals?
I mean, the problem with these kinds of things is that there are particular truths that have become sort of adopted as general truths. So, like, there are definitely jobs which are going to be changed by artificial intelligence, right? And there are probably even some jobs which will disappear altogether as a result of artificial intelligence. Now, my sense is that won't happen overnight. If you look at changes in the labour market, they don't tend to happen overnight. They tend to happen over a longer period of time. So, you know, it's a good lesson for all of us to be paying attention to what's happening in the labour market, to look at what's happening in our job, you know, to think about what else we can do and so on. But we don't need to panic about it. And I think the idea that there may be some jobs that have big changes or disappear shouldn't be used to assume that all jobs are going to disappear. I think that's very, very unlikely. I mean, we can talk more about artificial intelligence if you want, but it seems to me that the most likely outcome is that many of us have to learn to do our jobs in slightly different ways. Well, that's always been the case. You know, throughout history, we've had to learn lots and lots of different things. Jobs tend to change, they tend to develop, they tend to incrementally fade in and out. And so I'm not saying there's, you know, don't worry, you'll be all right. What I'm saying is, if you pay attention, if you kind of think about what's going on, also if you make a contribution and try to influence how the world around you goes. It's not, the world doesn't just happen. The world is a social construction. Human beings make it. We have the decision with AI whether we want to allow it to, you know, replace everyone or not. That is a choice that humanity will make. So we should pay attention. We should also try and influence. We should try and play a role in our society, and generally we should avoid panic. Really, I suppose that's my big message about because I think a lot of careers people get very hung up on the idea that everything is changing faster and faster, and I think we need to be a bit careful about that idea.
I appreciate you elaborating on that. And I think you've already started to address my next lens of the question of looking at the topic is about job seekers. So you've shared a little bit in that not to panic, but how can they prepare for the future? How they can feel confident that what I'm doing today is going to help me get a job tomorrow? If you have anything to add, I know you just addressed some of that.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's certain rules of thumb that we can always pay attention to, which are, generally there's, paying attention to what's going on in the labour market is a good idea. Increasing your qualification and skills, thinking creatively about what you can do and where you might do it in different places, not getting too hung up and fixated that, I know this from academia where a lot of people I work with, people are like, I can only be an academic. And I've worked as a researcher in lots of different contexts, in charities, in government, and so there's lots of transferable skills that we have, and so being open-minded and so on is helpful. I think the other thing is also to recognise that these things don't just happen, and that we are part of a society, we are citizens, and so it does make a difference. The organisations we work for, it does make a difference. How we vote in elections and so on. We can determine our society. So as a job seeker, one of the things I think you should do is pay attention to yourself, pay attention to the environment around you, but also pay attention to the big picture and think about how it's changing. So, we talk about AI. I'm much less worried about AI than I am about climate change. So if we think about climate change, is climate change going to change the kinds of jobs that are out there? Yeah, of course it is. But that is not unpredictable. We can see some of the things that are going to be good things to do, and we can start to work on them. We can start to respond to them, both individually and collectively. So, I think that the idea is that we should be, as careers professionals, we should be trying to empower people, and as individuals, you should be trying to look for possibilities and really recognise that you have agency over your life.
Thank you for this detail. I've got one final question for you, Tristram, and that's about taking on challenges. I always challenge clients to kind of always step out of their comfort zone, and we as career professionals try to do the same. So what are some of the new opportunities or challenges that you'd like to take on and share with the audience today?
Well, for me, gosh, well, I mean, I feel like I'm always pushing myself beyond my capabilities, perhaps too much, really. But I've been working a lot internationally, and I feel that one of the things that is really interesting, has been very interesting for me, and I would really encourage other people to do, is to learn about how things operate in different countries. Because if you're interested in career development and you're told by your government or your organization, this is possible, this is not possible, it's incredibly empowering when you look across and you see, well, look, in Germany they do it like this, or in Kenya they do it like that, and actually you learn all sorts of things that are possible, and it's almost like traveling to a different reality when you go to a different country and learn about it. So that's one area where I think we should all be challenging ourselves as careers professionals to think a bit more internationally and not to be so kind of boxed in by the immediate environment. The other thing, I mean, I've been involved in for a long while, and I'm still kind of very positive about, is the use of new technologies. And I think we can really make a lot of positive use of new technologies in our work. Now, there are dangers as well. We can sometimes get caught up with things that essentially are tricks and rather than actually useful to people. But I think a positive attitude towards the use of new technologies and engaging with that and thinking about how you can use that in your careers practice, that's really, really worthwhile.
For me, you are definitely a role model in the international, spreading the word about career development and sharing your work, but also learning, like you said, from other systems. I feel that you are a leader in that for sure. Thank you so much for your time, Tristram. I really appreciate the expertise that you shared and your time.
Great. Well, thank you for having me. It's been a great conversation.
You've been listening to Hoda's Career Info, the program where career professionals from across the globe join me to empower you to succeed. My guest today on Hoda's Career Info is Tristram Hooley. He reminded us that while it is important to have a career plan, we should recognize that there is a lot of power in happenstance. How has your career path been affected by happenstance? You can connect with Tristram Hooley on LinkedIn. Don't forget to share your feedback in the comments section. Please remember that you can listen to Hoda's Career Info since it's also dropped as a podcast. To let me know if you are interested in an opportunity to talk about your work, you can send me a direct message on my website, rightcareerfit.com, where you can also sign up for my newsletter to stay up to date on the latest episodes. Remember to like, subscribe, share, and follow me on social media for more career info. I am your host, Hoda, and until next time, stay inspired and keep moving forward in constructive ways.